Hey everyone, Yan Zhao back again. Today's special guest, John's Longbox, frequent commenter, longtime comic fan, and first-time author.
Yep. How you doing? Good to come back.
Thanks for coming back. We were both talking just a little bit before getting started. Both had crappy weeks, but forget crappy weeks.
Yeah.
Let's talk about good comics.
Yeah, I'm a construction worker, and this is just like the perfect weather. So it's just busy. So I haven't really been making too many videos this week. It's just you got to work, when the work. It's feast or famine with overtime and everything on my job. So there you go. Enough of that though. Let's talk about comic books.
So yeah, let's get started. We have Heroic Tales #1.
Yep.
Your book, fully funded.
Yep.
Not only fully funded, you're close to 500% over your target goal, meaning definitely people are going to get it. We're into the funding tier levels. So how are you feeling so far with the campaign?
Oh, good. It's going long. It was a 120-day campaign, so it was a 4-month campaign. Rookie mistake on my part. I should have only done a 3-month campaign, but you live and learn. So I'm in that middle period where the waters are calm, But like the first 2 weeks, boom, everybody was buying comics first, and then nothing. And then last week, I don't know what happened. I had like 10 sales last week. I don't know. Nice. The stars aligned or whatever. And that, so now I'm in that the doldrums again. So whatever. But in July, the first weekend of July, I'd like to launch on Kickstarter, and I'm going to have a variant cover. So I hope to drum up interest again. I got a cool cover by Michael T. Gilbert of Mr. Monster fame. Wow. And it's funny because Mr. Monster to me is a comic that I love, and I realized the last issue probably came out 25 years ago. So I got a variant cover by Pat Broderick. Thank God he just did Bronze Star with Mike Barron, but he's, my comic books is a love letter to old Bronze Age blue sky superhero comics, meaning, it's an all ages comic. Like you could see this on a spinner rack with Marvel and DC back in the 80s, you know what I mean? Pre-90s stuff. So I wanted to get artists to do variant covers who were active in that time period. So I got Pat Broderick, I got Michael T. Gilbert, and then when I go on Indiegogo, the third platform site, I'm gonna have I already have it. It's right there. Mike Gustovich did a cover also. So I got 3 classic comic book artists to do various covers, but the main cover, the regular cover is by Renzo Rodriguez, who's also doing the interior art.
There we go.
Renzo, that's my my partner. This comic would not be here if not for Renzo. If Renzo said I don't want to work with you, then I wouldn't be making a comic book. He is, and it's funny, we like the mutual admiration society. I was just talking to him yesterday, and he's like, "You're the best." I'm like, "You're the best." My wife is like, "Who are you talking to?" I'm like, "I'm talking to Renzo," and even my wife likes Renzo. He's such a good guy. He's so excited. He's the most positive person I've ever met. And he's so talented, and he's so excited to be working on comics. Renzo was a technical artist. I think he did like prints for like city planning, and you can see how talented he is. And so that's why his buildings are so intricate and so cool. But he loves comics, and he wants to draw comics, and I want to write comics. So I send him a description of. I sent him like a 1-page. I felt like Alan Moore. I drew out one whole page for one panel in the next issue, and he read it, and he just goes, "Oh, that's like what John Byrne did in Alpha Flight #4." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." So he knows his comics too. This is a guy who loves. So it was just so much fun to. And then he sent it back to me, and he goes, John Byrne did this with She-Hulk, and then he also did it in Alpha Flight. And John Byrne's my favorite artist, so this was a lot of fun. You know what I mean? And it's so good. And then so I'll backtrack a little bit. I'm getting excited. So, and I love talking about my comics. It's good to be excited about your comic. So this is classic superheroes, the Patriarch. I wanted to make a superhero that I thought was important. And at first, I made him as a joke, goof, like what'll piss off all these lefties and stuff like that. Oh, a patriarch. He's the and he was supposed to be like an overbearing, whatever. And then I started, no, I like this guy. That's a good name. And then I wisely thought, if you make a comic book character out of spite, it doesn't have any lasting value. It's like having, topical humor. That may be fun, but years later, you're not going to get the references. And you know what I mean? So I fell in love with the character, and I said, you know what? He's going to be the positive masculine traits that we kind of just poop on these days. So he's a good father. He's a loving husband. He's a patriot. He's a superhero. He's a good guy. And one of the things, like I had a great dad, and my dad, when we did the wrong thing, my dad didn't just rush into a room and beat the crap out of us. You know what I mean? There was like if we were getting beaten, it was like the last resort. And I wanted the patriarch. So I put the first scene, if you scroll down a little bit, you could see the first scene is a bank robbery. There's the Pat Broderick cover. I'll talk about it. But you see this guy's robbing the banks. And if you scroll down, you can see that it gets resolved without the patriarch beating up anybody. And I wanted that to show, like, this is how a father operates. He de-escalated the situation just by being a good father to the city of Science City. You know what I mean? So that's the behind the scene meta of why I wrote this the way it is. So, once you see the dialogue, you'll see a little bit more. He has like a little wink and a smile because, he's dad, he's the fun dad kind of thing. So I wanted this. I wanted him to be, he loves his wife. He loves his kids. And the name of the story is called Daddy's Home because he's just trying to get home. He's already had adventures before you open up the comic, and he's just trying to get home after a rough day of superheroing. And it never ends, especially when you have super senses. I was thinking about Superman. How could Superman in good conscience go to sleep? Because he has, weird senses where he could hear faster than the speed of light and sound or whatever. Somewhere on Earth, somebody's suffering. You know what I mean? So it's kind of selfish that Superman takes time off. His senses are a lot limited. You know what I mean? So it exerts him to use his super senses. So
it's funny.
Okay.
It's funny you say that because I just made I just made a video this week called "What's Wrong with Superman in 2024," and that was like part of my thesis. Like Superman, the way he was originally written, he's just fine with taking time off.
Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility, and I love Superman. Superman's my favorite superhero of all time. And Superman is the father of all superheroes. In a literal way, as being the first costume superhero, and then in a metaphorical way, whereas he leads by example. That's the whole point of Kingdom Come, which I absolutely love, is that Superman left and all the spoiled young became rotten superheroes, and then he had to come down and show them how to behave properly. So this comic, The Patriarch, is my love letter to fathers, to superheroes, to Superman, to all the stuff that really. I don't know about you, but superhero comics kind of like shaped my personality as a kid, So, but I also wanted to be able to tell stories of him being with his family and people not get mad at him. So he has to exert himself to use his powers. He has to exert himself to use his super senses. He's nowhere near as powerful as Superman. But that's what dads do. Dads always project themselves as Superman. The kids always think themselves. But then dad's up at night going, oh, man, I got to put in how many extra shifts so the kids have presents for Christmas. And, and the kid wakes up. He's like, hey, what do you want to do? So that's what he does. When he's fighting, he's going to struggle. And I'm bringing back thought balloons. So there'll be
nice.
In issue 2, there'll be thought balloons, so you'll see, oh, my God, that almost got away and things like that. So, that's what I want to do. And then I can't look at this without saying, look at this art. Renzo is so good, and Daniel De La Silva Rodriguez, his coloring is outstanding, So at first I was like, let's do this like old coloring, like in the 80s. And it just didn't look right. I don't know if it's because, we use computers instead of markers or the paper or whatever paper. This is on paper, but you know what I mean? It just didn't look right. So I said to Daniel, color it like you would color it the way you wanted to color it. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So as I was saying, this is called Daddy's Home. So he's just trying to get home. But before okay, I'm going to go home now, he releases his senses. He's like, oh, another thing. You know what I mean? So he goes off. So when he finally makes it home, scroll back up, it's the back cover. You know what I mean? So the back cover is kind of like the last page in the book. So that's what he's going home to. This is his family. You know, I love that. I was on the train and I was thinking, you know, this is my first comic book. And what do I want to put on the back? I don't want to have it just black because you pay for that, you know, and if you don't pay for it, you get an ad for the printer, which is fine. But I was like, I don't want to have an ad for the printer. No offense to the printer. I don't even know who the printer is yet. I'm narrowing it down to 2 printers. I want to have something that, you know, that represents. So I said, what is the patriarch? He's a dad. He's a father, you know. So I was like, I want to make it. So I just thought of this image. Like, this is almost exactly what I pictured in my head. And then I wrote to Renzo right away. We were, you know, text messaging back and forth. And he drew this. And I was like, oh, my God. And then when Daniel colored it, me and Renzo were like, oh, my God, this is so good. And now people, they want this as a poster. They want this to be the cover instead of the back. So, you know, it's too late for the Fund My Comic. It's already is what it is. Mm-hmm. So, like I said, when I launch on Kickstarter, I'm going to put as an option to have this as the front cover. People want black and white editions, you know. So, all right, I'll make that a tier if you want to get a black and white edition. So, give the people what they want, right? You know. So, but at the same time, like, you guys are asking for it. You know what I mean? I don't want to make it seem like, oh, he's gouging everybody with different covers and whatever. But
no,
you don't
I think it makes sense.
My feelings. But I have 2 covers. Every platform is going to have a varied cover. So I only plan for 4 covers. Renzo is the A cover through all 3 campaigns. And then we have Pat Broderick on Fund My Comic exclusively. Then we have Michael T. Gilbert on Kickstarter and Mike Gustovich on Indiegogo. So there you go. Oh, so a lot of talking. All he said was, how you doing, John, right? And I talked to 12 people.
So, you know, you mentioned Superman's your favorite superhero of all time, besides the patriarch. But what was your favorite either period or run for Superman? Like, what's the quintessential Superman for you?
For me, I know this is blasphemy, but the John Byrne, because I never collected Superman. I never collected DC until Crisis on Infinite Earths. Before Crisis on Infinite Earths, you know, I had older brothers. I have a lot of cousins. A lot of DC comics would just show up and I would read them. So I read sporadic issues. But I didn't like DC comics. Like, I didn't like DC in the 60s. With the exception of the war comics and the Western comics, the DC comics to me were, I thought the powers that be at DC pandered to kids. You know, when Stan Lee and Jack Kirby and all those guys, they never pandered to kids. So I thought, like, from the 60s on, Marvel was elevating reading comprehension for children. And the story, I don't think I do a show called Sunday Comics on my channel where I take old key issues and talk about them at length. So I did a comparison. I did Fantastic Four #1 and I did Justice League #1 a week apart to just show you. And I thought it was crystal clear that the DC comics were pandering to kids, whereas the Marvel comics were like, all right, we want to treat this seriously. We don't want to underestimate the kids. I always thought DC comics were children comics, you know, with the exception of being Legion of Superheroes and New Teen Titans, which were the comics that I collected before the Crisis on Infinite Earths. Then Crisis on Infinite Earths came, and they made it more like Bronze Age Marvel. So that John Byrne became my Superman. And I want to apologize to any old timers who may be watching this, because I remember how upset a bunch of old timers were when they changed Superman. They got rid of Superboy. They did this, and they merged all the Earths. I liked Earth 2 and I liked Earth 1, which is really funny because now the concept of the multiverse, even your grandmother understands. But back then they thought that was too difficult. And now when I'm seeing what they did to my superheroes, I'm like, I get it now. They're ruining these great characters that I absolutely loved. So you know, but there you go. John Byrne's Superman run is my run because that's what I collected. And you know, I saw '85 to about 2015. I got all the Superman comics.
Nice.
2015 is when I stopped with Marvel and DC. I just couldn't take the disregard for continuity. DC was the worst. There we go.
This is my favorite era.
Oh yeah, this is great too. Yeah,
it's just so
back
different when you
look at that advertising guns and comic books.
Oh, I know, right? BB guns and automatic repeating BB pistol, 30 shot.
I forget, was I talking to you? But we were going through a comic and there was an ad for Adolf Sporting Goods, and you could get whatever German political soldiers. I don't know if we're allowed to say it yet. That you could get like memorabilia at Adolf, and I just thought it was so funny. Like, hey guys, let's all skip on down to Adolf's and get a Luger and SS badges.
Spiked helmet. Yeah,
were different in the '70s and '80s than they are now. Oh yeah, I agree with you. If I knew you were going to bring this up, I would have brought it up. But Marvel, DC did these collections on newsprint, and they were going to reprint up to the to now. This was the only way I could afford these great Superman comics, these Wonder Woman comics, Green Lantern, Batman. So I've been reading them from the beginning.
Oh, nice.
I don't remember what they were called, but I'll take a picture and I'll put it on Twitter, and I'll at you later if you're interested. But they were like $12 chronologically, every Superman story, and I think I got like the first 7 or 8 volumes, and I think they just them, and good cheap reading copies.
The thing I like is, well, first I just want to point out, somebody was trying to tell me that no, Ma and Pa never died. This is issue 1 right here, 1939.
That was one of the changes that I thought was for the better, that John Byrne brought Ma and Pa, kept them alive.
Interesting.
I love that. Yeah, they were dead right there, right from the beginning.
Yeah, but the thing I like about this is, so in this first issue, like he stops a senator who is trying to start a war between 2 Latin American countries in order to sell more arms. Like, oh my God, it's hard to believe you would see this in 1938, 1939. Just like the topics they picked were so interesting to me, and in some ways made Superman like more relatable than what you'd see now. Now it's like he's always got to punch somebody, right? But like there's a bit where he gets a disguise and he's pretending to be a football player. Because like
sports, right? And fixing the games.
No, that was the boxer. I think the football player was his girlfriend wasn't interested in him. She didn't think he was manly enough. So Superman helps his team to basically win whatever the 38 equivalent of a Super Bowl was, so that his girlfriend would love him. And then the guy's like, oh, now I retire a hero. It's like, yes.
And then Superman, I love it. He beat up a wife beater.
Yeah.
He took out a bad landlord, and then of course a scientist that was like, gonna threaten with robot, and that's always people like, you see, Superman was always political, comics were always political, and to which I say, this is populism. Who in their right mind likes wife beaters? Who in their right mind likes senators that start wars? You know what I mean? If you're a Republican or a Democrat, you're supposed to hate senators who want to start a war for profit. You're supposed to hate, wife beaters. You're not supposed to like a bad landlord. This was populism. This wasn't politics. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, one thing about the wife beater thing, in issue 2, at the very beginning, like Superman's just kind of like super jumping through Metropolis. And there's this scene where this like a man drink drives home from work and he's like swerving in his car. His car stops on the train tracks and Superman like jumps there, moves the car off the tracks. And he's like, there you go, buddy. And then he lets the guy drive off drunk. It's hilarious.
Yeah, he probably saw some little kid ordering a rifle in the back of a comic book too.
And like a fifth of wild turkey. Yeah, it would be like Superman cigar starter kit or something.
I love the ads in old comics, and it's just like the hypno disc, and they have this like buxom girl walking like, and then the other one is just like the famous one, Man of the Beach. You're not picking up chicks at the beach. Yeah, work out, get all the chicks. It's like they were geared towards horny little boys. They were different world. Get guns, go to Uncle Adolph's. It was a different world. They don't even. What ads are there? Oh, I guess video games in modern Marvel and DC.
Oh, wow. Are there? Yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember. I think it's Skittles or some kind of candy or something.
I like this comment. Back in the day, the cops were from your hometown. They just said, "Go home, Joe." Yeah, the cops knew everybody. You're kind of right.
Yep.
If you lived in the town, yeah.
But even this, like, I kind of miss this kind of thing too. Is Supermen of America calling all red-blooded young Americans? See, they were not gender specific. Any red-blooded American could join this. I just think it was cool.
They have green blood.
Oh, that's not good. But I like that they had, like fan clubs. This is something that I know Japan still has. Like they have official in Korea. They'll have like official fan clubs for things. Like, wouldn't that be cool if Marvel and DC had like an official fan club and like every month, like Superman would send you a letter.
Right? The FOOM, Friends of Old Marvel, and the Mighty Marvel Marching Society. You just gave me an idea. Maybe I should start the Patriarchy and have like a fan club for the Patriarch.
You should get a monthly newsletter from the Patriarch.
Yeah, eat your Wheaties. That's a good idea.
Tell your mom you love her.
Yeah, hug your wife today. Value your time on the farm.
So since we're kind of, I don't know, I think we're somewhat in the middle of a how would you say, like a systematic change in the way that comics are. I mean, I don't think too many of us can really see Marvel and DC holding the positions that they've had culturally, at least for the last, somewhere between 50 and 80 years. So do you think like things like this will kind of come back with smaller creators? Like you're here, oh, hey, maybe I should do that. Do you think that you're going to see more attempts for creators to have like a closer relationship with the audience?
Well, we kind of have it, and we don't even realize it. Look at Twitter. If you like Cyberfrog, you could talk directly to Ben Skyver, and when he goes live, he has his chat room, and they're super chatting, they're talking, and they got inside jokes, and guys are sending them clips. What's the difference between that and a club? It really is. So we kind of have it, I would love that. I do my shows and people talk, I don't have a comic yet, but I would love that to people. Like, let's talk about, the latest issue of Heroic Tales and what did this mean? And I really like that. This was a mistake. You shouldn't do that again. Does it need to be on a message board? Does it need to be in a print newsletter or is it a YouTube channel? So in a way we kind of have it. And does Marvel have it? Because as far as I know, I don't see. I
don't think so.
I can't even think of a Marvel or DC writer like Jerry Duggan. Is that his name? Does he have a YouTube channel where he talks about what X-Men comic he just wrote and people? You know what I mean? So we're doing it out of necessity to get the word out because we don't have this big industry behind. This industrial giant like Disney behind us to promote, or 70 years worth of legacy characters that sell on momentum. So we have YouTube channels, we have Twitter and Rumble and all this stuff. So in a way, I think we already have it, and So.
Do you think that's going to be like, we definitely have it. I agree with you. It is easier to access creators now. Do you think like this is going to be
creators are pissing people off?
Well, some creators need to think about what they're doing, I would say.
Right. And this is my promise to myself. It was, what would Stan Lee do? And I'm not dumb. I know that somebody's going to hate my comic. There's going to be some person who's going to irrationally hate my comic. just like there's somebody who's gonna be like, it's the greatest thing in the world, and I'm gonna get everything. You know what I mean? Which, thank you for that person, whoever you are. But so I'm trying to think, what would Stan Lee do when somebody says something crazy about my comic? I don't want to be like, if you don't read my book, blah, blah, blah. So you know what I mean? Stan Lee would take it in stride. So I'm already practicing for. And please don't take this the wrong ways that I'm going to dismiss your criticism. I'm talking about the crazy person who won't leave me alone. Already, I've had people look at my comic, other creators and tell me you need to fix this. So it's, you know what I mean? So I'm not like my criticism, you're all my detractors. I'm talking about that crazy person. We know what.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to be like, give him the finger and don't read, the Kelly Sue DeConnick. Don't read my. No. What would Stan Lee do? I hope you like number 2, True Believer.
Yeah. See, I would enjoy that. I would say, if you bought a few more issues, you can make a bigger fire when you burn them.
Well, that the Bill Willingham approach. I don't know if you read the Elementals, but he was big into role playing games and Dungeons and Dragons and stuff. And back in the 80s, I'm sure you remember there was that Satanic Panic in D&D.
Oh yeah,
and he wrote a letter in his own comic, and he says he hopes that and this is Bill Willingham's sardonic, sarcastic, irreverent humor back then. I don't think he's like it now. But he was just like, if there's ever a cult mass murder, I hope they find some Elemental comics among the bodies. He goes, start a controversy, and then everybody starts buying my comic to burn it. Marvel made you feel like you were part of the comics. DC never seemed to care. Felsbug, yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. But then again, maybe that's why I love Marvel. I don't know, but like. We talk about my second favorite character of all time was the Thing. He just, this big rock creature, and he seems so real because, let's face it, who among us didn't feel out of place, out of sorts? We down and out. Nobody liked us. Whatever. I just love that about the Thing. You didn't get that in Marvel. Even Metamorpho had the hot girlfriend, and it was adventuring around, and he wore the Rex Mason mask, and he was Indiana Jones. Yeah, I love that.
Do you think it's kind of hard to say because I was a kid in the 80s, so I wouldn't have noticed. But do you think that at the time, like let's say late 70s to very early 80s, that the people at Marvel sort of cared more than DC? Like not necessarily that DC, that they were phoning it in, but that they were like, okay, we have to get this done, we have to get that done. Whereas Marvel always sort of seemed more of a chaotic place where people could kind of sort of push their pet projects through a little more.
Well, I'll answer that because I had Jim Shooter on my channel and we kind of talked about that. And as far as I'm concerned, when you talk about comic books, if Jim Shooter says it, that is the primary source. And he said that DC was the original guys. These were the guys that they were older and everything. And they were just like, no, it's the comic exists in this. It's like the Simpsons. At the end of every Simpsons, it's the status quo.
It's got to reset.
It resets. It's like and Jim Shooter saying, no, we got to be more like Marvel. Whereas Marvel now, Stan Lee, we forget Stan Lee kind of left Marvel in the 70s and handed it over to Roy Thomas. Roy Thomas grew up reading comics. He was a fanboy, and I'm sure I'm wrong, but as far as I know, Roy Thomas was the first fanboy who got hired to become a pro. And, he took comics seriously, and he started writing. He wasn't much of a editor-in-chief because the Roy Thomas years were kind of chaotic. But they started hiring like Jim Starlins and all these guys who they wanted to do. Jim Starlin famously did all of his Galactic characters like Adam Warlock and stuff like that. They loved it. Grew up on DC, but they wanted to tell grand stories. Whereas DC, as far as I know, they still had the same old guys, the grandpas. And Jim Shooter, he was like 14, 15 years old writing for a Legion of Superheroes. And he said, we got to be more like Marvel. And they're like, no, it's for kids. Kids don't care. Kids don't care. So, and then he started writing like Marvel anyway. And lo and behold, his run is legendary in the Legion of Superheroes. So I think the writing was on the wall. I mean, I remember before the Crisis on Infinite Earth, there was a Wonder Woman comic, and she was fighting like cartoon pink elephants that were floating in the air. And I was just like, who wants this? But now I'm reading 70s and 60s DC comics, and I find them charming. So I've come full circle. But as an edgy punk rock 16, 17-year-old kid, I didn't want Mixoplick saying his name backwards, or otherwise he'll turn Batman or Superman into a banana. You know what I mean? I wanted to think, I can't live a normal life because I'm an outcast. You know, and then you're 16 years old, you're like, Ben, you and me both, man. We're both outcasts. You got me, Ben, you know? So.
Too, there used to be more of like a gradation where they would have comics for like real young kids, like 5, 6, and then you get up, and for whatever reason, it stopped around 13 to 15 years old. Now it almost seems like we have the opposite, where there's a lot of more adult themes comics, but I rarely see that much for young kids. Do you ever think that we'll get back to that? Because for me, that's part of what the current readership problem is with comics. Is like at some point they just abandon that early step, so there's nobody to follow up us old farts.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, but my comic is for all ages. I'm a big fan of all ages comics, and when I say all ages, I mean, there's nothing too gory, there's nothing too sexual, but Fantastic Four is all ages. You know what I mean? So it's accessible to kids, and that's why I tried to keep my price as low as possible, $10. And it's a complete story. I might as well do the full commercial. It's a complete story. But I agree with you. Comics, they used to be like Richie Rich and Archie and why can't I think of Little Wendy and Nancy and so many different comics that I'm picturing the images and I can't think of the names. But I don't know what happened. I think they just fell apart. Comics got too expensive. Like, when the story I always tell is my mom would give me $2. I would ride my bicycle. I would go down to the drugstore, and I'd put $1.75 in quarters into the machine, pull, and the pack of cigarettes would fall down. Can you believe that? Me as a little kid riding with training wheels to go buy cigarettes from him. And then the quarter that was left over, I could buy a comic book. And I was happy to go. It was a nice deal between me and my mom. She didn't have to do anything. I rode down, I bought the cigarettes, I got a comic book, gave her the cigarettes, and I'm reading the Avengers. What changed? Can you're at the supermarket lineup and you're just like, Mom, buy me a comic book, $7? I'm not buying $7. And then like my sister says, every once in a while she'll buy a comic for her little girls, and they open it up like, oh, Wonder Woman, and like, what's going on? It's part 6 of a 12-issue story, and it's $7, and they're not going to spend $35 to get a story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
I mean,
kids, they're not writing them for little kids. Marvel. The last I remember is Marvel did that Star line, with droids and Ewoks and
oh, well, that was the 80s.
Yeah, that was the 80s. That's geez, it's funny because
they had Thundercats.
And Thundercat, yeah. And I see this comment. Felsbug says manga captured. Yeah, manga is not only capturing young kids, it's capturing young adults. It's capturing teenagers. It's capturing everybody, and good for them. Well, I wish America would make comics that were popular, but it should be meritocracy, and for whatever, well, not for whatever reason. One of the things about manga is, okay, I'm into One Punch Man. It's what should I? Oh, get the first volume. It never reboots. It never restarts again. They don't change the character for modern times. I don't know if One Punch. I just pulled that name out of my hat, but when the story's over, it ends, and then they're going to do something else. So characters die. There's changes. You know what I mean? This drop. Like Reed Richards is never going to die. Even when he died, you knew he was coming back. Is that One Punch Man? Oh, Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball. Yeah, I was in Japan a couple of weeks ago. I picked up a bunch of books while I was there, and still have Dragon Ball issue number 1.
Yeah, I never got into manga. In the 80s, I think it was first in Eclipse Comics. They sent a wave of manga my way, and I saw like Lone Wolf and Club,
Barefoot, that was awesome.
Macross Saga, and By the Psychic Girl are the ones that I can remember off the top of my head. And I loved them, and I thought they were great. And then just as soon as they came, like it was like a year or 2 years,
gone.
They were gone. I guess they failed to catch on or whatever. But I got nothing against manga. I just don't know it. To the point now I'm starting to look for it because my nieces and nephews are reading it. They're 30. My nieces and nephews are from like 5 years old to 30 years old, and they're all reading manga.
Mhm.
And I feel left out of the conversation.
Well, one thing I'd like to point out is this is small. This is a
Yeah.
very small book. It's black and white. Um, it's on newsprint. So I guess my question is, since money is a problem, why can't Marvel and DC come out with cheaper versions of like classic Superman or
They
Batman
are.
or X-Men stories, but in something that's this small? So this
They are.
was,
They just announced it. They're making manga-sized graphic novels.
did they?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
Yeah. So you'll get like the Court of Owls or Dark Knight Returns in a smaller, they got to do something. I sometimes, as much as I love comics, and guys, I got my spinner rack over here. I got my wall of comics. I'm making a comic. I don't think anybody's going to think I'm a tourist or whatever, the grifter or whatever that stuff. I love comics, but in my heart, I feel they're dying. I'm talking about American comics. They're dying. And I go online and it's just people fighting about whatever camp you belong in, and nobody's focusing on the comics. So I applaud Marvel and DC for trying something different.
For sure.
You know what I mean? They got to, because if Marvel and DC die, that'll hurt me. Even as much as I don't get Marvel and DC, I don't want Captain America to go away. I want Marvel and DC to right the ship. But I don't know. Comic books are dying, and we're all fighting with everybody over here in the independent scene. We have become the Whisper Network backstabby thing that all of that we rebelled against.
Yeah.
My theory is it's like Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great fought the Persian Empire, and then when the Persian Empire was defeated and Alexander died, all his generals fought among. We're in the generals fighting amongst ourselves because there's no great enemy. Maybe Marvel should rise again so that we all unite and fight against the common enemy.
I don't know. I think your boy Zach, what he was saying in 2017 is right. I think eventually it's all just going to be farmed out, and to people who have the licenses, and that'll be it. But I do think
I think that's coming.
In the future, it has a potential to return. But I think a lot of what you're saying with the money thing is right. We really got off track with the money in the early 90s, around the time Image started, because they started using better quality paper instead of just regular newsprint. And so you have to keep upping the prices. Whereas, like what you were saying, it was pocket money for kids to get comics. These were, any adult should be able to buy them as an impulse buy instead of being like, should I get a comic or milk? Once you're.
I want Batman, Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, because I can't get all three like I used to.
Yep. But even now, at like $6 a piece, that's a lot of money. And and you're right. Could you before you could easily collect 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 titles a month, and it wouldn't break the bank.
I used to, even in junior high school, I used to get everything Marvel that put out, and then in later years of high school, after the Crisis and Infinite, I got everything Marvel and DC put out. And then later I started getting everything from Image because I was a crazy person, even though I didn't like it. But I did, and then I to the point where 2015 I was spending $400 a month on comic books. You know what I mean? And I was like, $400 a month. This is like a nice car payment. I could have like a Lamborghini or something. What am I doing? So.
But yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see if they come up with what they come up with this, because I think part of the solution is what I call a high-low strategy. Is like, you still have those high quality paper and you get the extra stuff, and like a lot of what you see, like if people were right now to buy Heroic Tales, they would get the ultra high deluxe edition. But it seems like there has to be a lower entry point where it becomes like very common and cheap entertainment, which is what it started as. Once you sort of make comics into like an expensive, bougie kind of entertainment, it's kind of a tough sell.
I agree. I was told by a few people that I'm doing it wrong. I made the comic price too low, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I am in my late 50s and I'm thinking about the way things used to be. I don't know, but I do feel comic books should be affordable. I mean, if you want to make the big booby sex comic and that's what you want to do, and you could charge more because it's aimed for adults, I totally get that too. But I want to make a superhero who beats up robot ants. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
So I want you could read this with your kids. Issue number 2, there might be a little suggestive, but nothing that Teen Titans didn't do. And issue number 3, I have a Batman character, and I want it to be violent. It's kind of like not a goof, but it's kind of like the Frank Miller So, but I don't think I'm going to be crossing any lines, But so I want kids to be able to afford this. Like, are you going to buy this for your kid? Probably not. Let's be realistic, But if you did buy it and your kid wanted to read it, great. That's awesome. But I would like to, at some point, like when I have like 6 issues, make like a graphic novel, maybe sell it. I would like to find out how to get in distributors and maybe make a cheaper edition for comic book stores when I have like 6 issues out, so I could do it for 6 months, and by that time I'll probably have issue 7. I'm hoping by issue 6 I'll be able to regularly make a comic, so it's not like a year or 8 months in between. But I love to comic stores with a cheaper edition, and then a 6-issue graphic novel, put it on Amazon or sell it in comic stores. I love comic stores. I want to support them.
I think distribution's one of the big issues, and here's from Michael. You don't see them anywhere but specialty shops because of the higher price. Well, I think that's a large problem because you're never going to go into a specialty shop. Like, I never go into a plumbing shop unless I have a problem with my toilet or something.
Right.
I don't just randomly walk in there looking for stuff. And that's the problem with comics is when they used to be everywhere.
Right.
That's how kids got started. Like you'd be at the checkout and you'd be like, mom. And then she's like, okay, fine, I'll pay.
Right there. Hey, kids comics, spinner rack. When I do my Sunday comics, I'm like, this one I specifically remembered going into a 7-Eleven, and Marvel 2-in-1 Annual 2 was there with Thanos holding Ben Grimm, throwing him at Spider-Man. How did I not get that comic? It was, even when I said to Mom, buy me that, she was like, yeah, like it was understood. I had to have this. But like you said, let's use the example of vaping. I'm not into vaping, but how many people just wake up one day, you go, you know what? I'm going to start vaping today, and go to a vape shop and get their vape and that whatever. I don't even know the vaping accessory. You know what I mean? So people don't wake up and go like, you know what? I'm going to go with comic books. Never bought a comic book. I'm going to seek out a comic book store, and I'm going to go in and buy a comic book. No, by the time you're inside a comic book store, you're already a comic book fan. With the very few exceptions of like people who maybe saw a Marvel movie and they're like, oh, that, I'd like to go in. But, Chuck Dixon said, you got them at the newsstands, you got them at the spinner racks. And then you got the hardcore kids to go into the comic book stores. But he says, but once Marvel and DC started pushing the comic book stores, Chuck Dixon said it was the first nail in the coffins of American comics. And when he said that years ago, I thought he was crazy. And now he's absolutely 100% right. And now this is bad for me to say this about myself, but who's waking up going, you know what? I used to like comic books, or I think I'm going to go on my computer, Google comic books for sale, and look at this, Heroic Tales. Anybody who's looking at Heroic Tales, they're already way into comics, you know what I mean? And so like there's no newbies like you guys like, I'm a Civil War buff. Oh wow, a comic book. Or I'm a vape guy. Oh, look, a comic. So, you know what I mean? It's it's a subset of a subset of a subset. And I would like to break free from that. And like your boy Zach used to say, who's your target audience? Everybody on Earth. Can I get everybody on Earth to buy a copy of Heroic Tales? That would be awesome. But, how do I do? And I'm not smart enough to come up with a solution for that. So one step at a time. I'll get the comic out, and then I will try the best I can to expand the audience. But I'd like to have 6 or 7 issues so I can have, some
You
what's
need
the
some
word?
flexibility, some stock,
Flexibility, or at least let people know, hey, this guy's serious.
Yeah.
The guy, I think his name is Zachary Boris. He doesn't crowdfund. He makes them all himself, and he only goes to conventions. And this guy's like selling like $5,000 of comics at conventions. And then he found out about YouTube, and he came on my channel, and I was like, what? That's his full-time job. He was a union construction worker like I was. He quit, and he just goes to, and I was like, I thought conventions were dead. So yeah, there's plenty of venues. I just, I gotta get out there, and I'm willing to entertain ideas, guys. If you know what ideas,
Yeah. Well, so here's Michael. Maybe the answer is investing in a spinner rack or two, setting them up at the local gas station. Could someone take off like that? Well, there actually was a guy. I saw him on Comic Book Radio, which is Peter Simeti's channel, and he was talking about that's what he's doing. He orders batches of indie comics, and he's got a spinner rack at his local grocery store. And then Mobius here, corner stores, smoke shops, and pharmacies. He also does weed shops. And he says the weed shops are selling like crazy.
Yeah. Oh, man. Look at this guy. This guy's far out. He's up. Justin Sweet, his name is. And he has he has the comic Chrome Dog. Mm-hmm. Great guy. That's what he does. He spends a lot of his time going up and down his area. I do think that, but first off, nobody's reading magazines. When was the last time?
Yeah.
When was the last time you even saw a magazine for sale?
They've got like one little dusty corner.
In an
airport. The returns aisle in their grocery store.
Yeah. So like a local pharmacy, a CVS.
That would be cool. I bet you could do things like, I bet a farmer's market. I bet you could make some money selling stuff there. I would like to see Marvel in DC start doing it with like Happy Meals. Like, buy your kids a Happy Meal, get a free comic. Get a Pizza Hut, get a free comic, right? And just do reprints. You don't even have to do anything new. Do reprints on newsprint, and then there you go.
That's a good idea. But let me ask. I have no idea how many people watch it. Does anybody read comics online? Because I need a comic book. I'm an old fart. I can't read. Somebody sent me PDFs today. Can I come on your channel? Here's my comic. I'm like, I got to look at it, but I don't want to. I'd rather have a comic, but I can't ask them to mail me a comic. That's kind of mean. But you know what I mean? Is that the future? Digital comics? I have a digital tier because I had a couple of guys who were like in Ireland and England. Like, sorry, but I'm going to spend $40.
Yeah, I can't afford it.
$10. And I heard that, so I made a digital tier, kicking and screaming. Like I said at the beginning, give the customers what they want. But I
think
technology bombed. So
I think it's going to be. I think that's going to be part of it. Like I mentioned, the high-low strategy. You need that cheap version. So I think, we're not going to except for Alterna. Nobody else is going back to newsprint. Nobody else is doing what they need to do to make cheaper versions of their product. So I think that's going to have to be the low end. That's going to have to be the way that people get into it. But, how can you differentiate your book and promote your book when everything is primed towards manga or manga looking things? That's a hard sell to me. But I do think if you can get into that, then you start building fans, and people are like, oh yeah, I want this as a book. I want this as a physical thing. And then you can upsell with physical copies. Of course, you give them more benefits and stuff.
If anybody in the chat is interested in my comic, it's at Fund My Comic. Yeah, it's live right now on Fund My Comic. It'd be remiss in my duty if I didn't sell my comic.
If you are on my channel, check the top of the chat. The link is pinned up there, and it is also in the description on. If you're on my YouTube channel. If you're on John's, well, then come over to mine and look for the link and subscribe while you're there.
Fund My Comic, Heroic Tales. If you put that in, you'll find it. I don't. Yeah, kids don't read.
I disagree. I think this is a parental problem. You have to make them read. What they read specifically should be up to them. Like, do they like fantasy? Do they like action? Do they like, sports figures or whatever? That should be up to them. But it's up to you to get them to read, right? Like, your kids don't have to like every vegetable out there, but you have to make them eat some vegetables.
Right.
Um,
I used to be a public school teacher, and I'm not joking. With a 90% accuracy, I could point out which kids' parents read to their kids. And if you read to your kids, they will pick up. Reading is something that you do, something that's important. My parents never read to me, and I couldn't read in third grade. My father was a hardworking blue collar guy with 7 kids. My mom was a mom with 7. So it's not like they sat there with the book and read to me. And it wasn't until comic books that I learned to read and loved to read, because reading was math. You don't sit around doing math. It's a school activity. School's over. I'm running around like an idiot with, playing baseball and stickball and stuff like that. I'm not doing math with my buddies. So I didn't read with my buddies, but then comic book got me to. So you gotta, like you said, parents, read to your kids, instill them in the idea that there's nothing wacky, there's nothing weird about reading. And then, like you said, they'll pick up on. At DCC, you already backed it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love all 156 of my backers. I'm so amazed that 156 people want to read my comic. That's amazing. Comics are a gateway drug to literacy. This guy Yang Zhao, he once in a while he says something smart.
I think that's how we should advertise comics from now on.
Yeah, I remember who was it? But my father had a friend that hated. He was a professor and he hated comic books. They were trash. They were worthless. And my mother even said, like, I was up in bed and I could hear them arguing downstairs. And she said, John couldn't read months ago, and now he's reading. So let him read comic books first. And to the point when I was in 5th grade, I didn't realize it at the time, but they were doing a study on me because I was reading Thomas Mallory's Le Morte d'Arthur in 5th grade, and taking notes, and and I got called into the school counselor's office, and she had some of my notes. I must have dropped them. She's like, "What is this?" And I started explaining, and then I was like, "Am I in trouble?" Like right then and there, she said the wrong thing. I would have stopped reading. It was like one of those pivotal moments. And she's like, "No," but I didn't realize that she was like studying me because she saw my test scores 2 years ago. I couldn't read, and now carrying around big hard, and that's all comics. I never stopped, never stopped. I'm the kind of freak that's reading 3 or 4 novels at any given time because I never thought I was ADHD, but I'm starting to think maybe I was as a kid. Like I used to rock back and forth. I used to have to pull the tabs off my t-shirts because they drove me crazy. When my mom put suntan lotion on me, I used to cry and scream like, you know what I mean? I'd rather get a sunburn than but now I'm reading like 3 books at any given time. I'll read like 3 issues of a comic, then go to another 3 issues of a comic and then come back. So whatever. Now I don't stop reading.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's part of the solution too, is this is something that I kind of fault comic book stores for is, I've seen a number of parents, especially dads, they go into the comic book stores and then they look at what's there and they're like, oh, dear Lord, either from the content or the price. Like comic book stores, you should have hey, welcome back to comics, or let's get your kids, back to school comic section.
Marvel and DC should be making family friendly Spider-Man. Thor. To go back, my friend Larry owned a comic book store called The Incredible Pulp. I worked there. All my friends worked there. And the funny thing is, all of my core friends from they're all making comics now. And Larry, as far as I know, had one of the first in-store appearances of any comic book store. He had Dave Sim.
Nice.
Dave Sim Cerberus was up like issue 6, and there's a picture on Dave Sim's website of like 12-year-old me looking at Dave Sim, like I cared about Cerberus. I just wanted a free comic book. You know what I mean? It's funny. I'm like, oh my god, that's my fat body with flannel shirt on. But anyway, he was saying that weekly, at the height of all the Marvel stuff, a father would come in with their sons and daughters equally. And like, oh, we just saw the new Captain America movie. Let's get this Captain America, And they're like, okay, here's Captain America. Who's this? This isn't Steve. This, it's the Falcon as Captain America. Okay, well, all right, let's get Thor. Oh, it's not only is it Jane Foster, not only is Thor a woman, but she's a woman with cancer. You know, I'm like, okay, we
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
want okay, let's get Iron Man. Okay, that's not Tony Stark. This is a 12-year-old black girl. Where's Tony Stark? We just saw the movie, and he said that they would buy like a pack of Pokemon cards on the way out, to keep the kids from crying. And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Why
and I mean,
Marvel strangled himself. Oh,
even if these comic book stores don't have like the Marvel and DC titles, they should be getting some of these titles in stock and just have like a packet. Like, here's 10 comics, that are kid friendly that you love.
Michael Dare just bought my comic.
Nice. Nice.
Like, I gotta have like a little dancing gif or something like that. Thank you, Michael. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just got excited. But you're absolutely right. You walk into a comic book store, there should be a spinner rack. Hey Kids Comics. Every one of these is guaranteed not to have anything weird, creepy, offensive, sexual, too scary, or too gross. You should have Spider-Man stopping a bunch of muggers. Dr. Octopus tries to steal the statue from the library or the museum, like the library. What am I talking about? You know what I mean? But it should be like that, and family friendly. Batman stopping the Joker from putting addictive lipstick out there, so everybody wants to buy Joker lipstick. You know what I mean? Something like that, and then move on. Like Marvel did have a amazing super. I can't remember, Amazing Adventures or something like that, and it was it was like The Simpsons. Every episode reset the continuity. The status quo was and it was fun. I used to read them, even though it wasn't, because I love the continuity. I love all that subtle lore and nods to, oh my God, Sal Buscema did this 30 years ago, and this artist is referencing that. And I'm one of 17 people left alive on the planet that get that. I love all that stuff, but I also see the value in this comic book exists in this comic book. You don't need any other comic book. And that's what I want to do with my comic. Complete story. You don't need to read anything. You're not going to be left hanging for 8 months until I come up. If I need to tell a longer story, I'll make a longer comic book, because let's be realistic. I don't know how long it's going to take me to make my next comic. So I don't think it's fair to make you wait 9 months and then spend $35 an issue to get a story. So it's $10 complete story. I got to sell my comics. Yeah, I hope you understand. But you're right. Marvel Comics, DC Comics, they shoot themselves in the foot. Image Comics has a different philosophy. They have a different. So I understand what Image. They're more of like the boutique comic store company. But Marvel or DC, when you get the Fantastic Four, you got to adopt the Jim Shooter, Stan Lee method. This is somebody's first comic, and they don't know what's going on. And we're going to tell you who Black Bolt is. We're going to tell you why Black Bolt doesn't talk. We're going to tell you why Ben Grimm is the way he is. You know what I mean? I don't know. I think this is like suicide. It's like that friend who won't stop dieting, and you're like, I love you, man, but you're 450 pounds. And then they drop dead, and you're like, I tried to warn you.
And to me, in a lot of ways, it's kind of.
I got the pint glass. There you go. It'll make your beer taste good. Yeah. I wanted to
very nice
flag. So I'm like, if the patriarch is a dad, what dad doesn't like a beer after conquering the Martians or stopping a sentient polar bear invasion? He has a beer, and can you begrudge the guy? He's got 7 kids.
He's gonna need a few. But yeah, I mean, and to me, I don't understand why they don't have different tiers within Marvel and DC too.
Absolutely.
So we used to have regular, and then we used to have like Vertigo, right? And Vertigo was aimed at an older audience, more mature subject matter. Why don't they do that now?
Well, they did. They had Marvel Max, but you're right. They went up. Marvel Max was boobies and guns and violence, and I love Marvel Max.
Nothing wrong with that. Yeah,
the Punisher was perfect in Marvel Max. If ever a character was made for Marvel Max, it was the Punisher. But they should have also had Marvel Junior, or I totally agree with you. And like I said, I'm trying to remember, was it Marvel Adventures? And if you look, there's I order my comics from discount comic book service. I know I said I love comic book stores, but they give like 35 to 50% discounts. I'm sorry, guys, so it allows me to get the comics that I still like. They still have these all ages Marvel comics, but they're not by Marvel. I wish I could. I'll try to look up what company makes Marvel comics for kids, but it's not Marvel.
I mean,
you can't find them in a store.
If they're going to do that, Marvel should be helping to push those books like crazy. Because you need those 5 or 6 year olds to start reading your book so that in another 5 or 6 years, they're ready for your regular titles.
Absolutely.
If you cut the legs out of your younger audiences and you let them all go to manga, then, what are you going to do?
Because it's, I say like comic books are like jazz, okay, I got into jazz. Where do I start? And it's intimidating, this jazz. So many times I said I want to get into jazz, and so many times I got intimidated and left. Now I'm wading into jazz and loving it, but I'm a stubborn person. How many people I want to get into comic books? Okay, true story. I went to Free Comic Book Day on Long Island. Billy Tucci was there. Cecil was there, for cash grab.
Oh yeah, I saw those pictures.
And Vaughn Coleman was there, who has Phenomenova. So Vaughn's like, let's go. I was like, yeah, you're right. First off, I got to say, Billy Tucci is like the Frank Sinatra of comics. This guy was the coolest guy. He goes, hey, John, come on over. No, I walk in and I'm all nervous. I'm like, hi, Billy Tucci. I'm John from John's Long Box. The first thing he says is, how come you haven't had me on your channel yet? I was like, and he's like, we're going to a bar after this. Come on. And we all hanging out.
That's awesome.
The most charming guy I've ever met. Vaughn is cool. But anyway, there was a whole line of people there. And I just started talking with this dad. And I'm like, oh, you into comics? And we're talking. So, I'm handing out my card for Heroic Tales. I made these little cards to give out people with QR codes. You know what I mean? Nobody's going to remember. www.fundmark. So here's a card. Scan this, buy my comic. And he was like, oh, cool. He goes, but I'm not into comics. My daughter is. I was like, how old's your daughter? I'm thinking it's this 15-year-old girl. So she comes over, introduces herself. And I'm like, you're into comics? She goes, yeah, I started about a year ago. She goes, matter of fact, this is my first comic. She took it off the rack and she was talking about it. So I said to her father and to her, because I didn't want to be a creepy old man, I'm like, may I ask you a few questions? And she's like, sure. Are comics confusing? Was it hard to get into? And she goes, yeah, but I really liked it. And that's what I said. If you kids are smart, if you really like something, it's worth the work. And she said before, without any prompting, I wish they never discontinued the numbers. She goes, I love the older comics because if it's Thor 172, and I'm reading on the bottom, this is Thor fought, the Abominable Snowman in Thor 156. She goes, I know they come out every month. 172 minus 156, it was whatever, 20 months ago. And, and then I could gauge how expensive that might be. And she goes, but nowadays, I don't know if they're referencing another comic. Is it volume 6? Is it volume 3? What year is this? And it's all confusing. She goes, and this was a 15, 16-year-old girl. I was like, oh my God, she's saying everything that I said. And I thought I was maybe out of touch. But, they're shooting themselves in the foot. Marvel never should have redid the numbering system.
Yep.
They should have fought tooth and nail to keep the prices down as low as possible. And I have to agree with Chuck Dixon, retroactively, they never should have abandoned the newsstands.
Nope. But I mean, the problem is I can't even think where there is a newsstand, and there's so few bookstores. I mean, as much as the Allegiance art experiment failed, I think we need to see people in Costco, or Target, or, well, I hate to say Walmart since I know how crappy they treat their vendors, but places like that,
people, Rich Breitweiser and I Salvatore, the two guys behind Elite Arts. I'm sure I'm messing his name up. They were one of the first people to ever come on my channel because I was raving about this comic called The Saint, and they happened to watch my and they invited themselves on my channel, and we had like a 2-hour talk. And some people get nasty with them, and I was like, this is not fair. You do business with Walmart. Doing business with Walmart is like doing business. Like if you're Yolando Calrissian and you're doing business with Darth Vader, I'm altering the deal. Pray I alter. You know what I mean? Mitch, he was over a barrel, and I think the fans unfairly attacked Mitch to the point where he's not on YouTube anymore. He doesn't really interact with the fan. And I will say this: I'm a complete comic book freak. Allegiance Arts were the best comics that came out by far in the past 10 years, 20 years. I name a crowdfunded comic right now. Allegiance Arts is better. That Bass Reeves is outstanding. The Saint was outstanding. The Rooster, that was such a good comic. And it's a shame. I don't know if they're still making comics, but they were excellent comics.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because I was trying to look them up a little bit to see, if I could get a Brightweiser on. But I was looking at the website, and it looks like the last updates from a couple of years ago. I don't know what's going on.
The emails, you can email them, see if they'll come on. But I think they got attacked, and they got attacked again with people with incomplete information. They fact. I got my books, and they're great condition, great story, great art. Some of the best comics. And it's driving me nuts. Nick Salvador, he's one of the guys who wrote The Fifth Element. He's asking, he goes, I'll help edit your scripts and stuff like that. They're nice guys, but they naively or whatever made a deal with Walmart, and then Walmart, we all have problems with Walmart, and then when a guy has a problem with Walmart, we attack that guy. If anything, we should have been sympathetic and be like, oh man, you tried to do something, and you dealt with the devil. I thought I was hearing Eric why he's saying the same thing.
Is he? No, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Can you explain that comic? I because I think Eric Weathers was.
Or does what? Yeah, do one of us sound like Eric Weathers?
Do I sound like Eric Weathers? I'm just curious.
Yeah, he's another guy I'd like to get back on.
I'm rad. Cool. The young kids are calling me rad.
But to me, that's one of the problems with a lot of this drama that's going on is like, none of us, well, I shouldn't say none of us, maybe you're in some of these DM chats, but I'm not in any of these DM chats. So when two people start feuding, like I have no idea what's going on. And like, I don't want to pick a side. It's like, oh Jesus, what's I like you both. What's wrong with you guys?
Cards on the table. I'm in two chats.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is me, Brian Bow, and Fabrizio Aiello. He does Wolf and Betsy and Horace H. Hoover. And we basically talk about comic books. Oh, man, did you see this horror movie? Did you see this comic book? Oh, my God, Wolf and Betsy was awesome. Brian, that was such a good comic. Horace H. Hoover is doing, don't tell me, I want to be surprised. And then it's me going, is this a good idea for my comic? And these two guys have been instrumental in help. That's my big and most common chat group. The other chat group is like 36 guys. And what is it? Anybody need a guest next week? Oh, yeah, I need a guest next week. Oh, I have an opening over here. John's promoting. Let's do this. We don't talk about anybody. We don't mention anybody. If these DMs were to get revealed, you'd be like, man, comic book people are really dull. There's nothing juicy.
Yep.
So I don't know which chat groups there, and I know they exist. It's human nature. I'm on a construction site. There's 4 guys that don't like anybody else. They hang out together, and I'm sure they're talking crap about me right now. And you know what? I don't care because they're miserable, and I'm making a comic book, and I'm about to eat some delicious Chinese food, and they're miserable. So,
So Derail says, no, I thought Yang Yan Zhao did for a second. Well, that's interesting. Do I sound like Eric Weathers?
I've talked with them before, but I can't remember what his voice sounds like.
That's a guy who used to have a great show too. When they used to do Gentlemen Scoundrels with him and Von Klaus and Clint Stoker would show up. Those were good shows.
Yeah, but, I had Clint on. He was great. Eric canceled because of a problem. I'm trying to remember, but so I got to reschedule it with Eric Weathers. I don't know if there's chat groups and it's all just nasty and negativity. I would leave. I would leave. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you'll notice I'm not in any of these fights. I don't want to have anything to do with. Yesterday, I at the risk of starting drama here, people are just going off and off on Eric July, and I said, why are you wasting time talking about Eric July? You don't like his comics? Don't buy them. Don't talk about them. And I say the same thing all the time. There's a restaurant around the block that I hate. I don't talk about it, and I don't go there. And it doesn't bother me that there's a line around the block for people to get to this disgusting restaurant that charges too much and it's gross. But that's them. They like it. I don't. So
yeah.
And I mean, I don't want to say I was attacked, but people are like, but you don't understand. He's ruining comics. No, he's not.
Yeah, that's the part I don't get. Like, if he's ruining comics, isn't that good for you? Like, then my comic should look extra awesome compared to his, right?
I don't understand it. I don't understand.
I don't.
There's people at work that I don't like, and I don't talk about them. I deal with them as least as possible. Comic books are fun. I just got this today. I want to talk about this Creepy 63. It supposedly has the greatest horror story ever written by Bruce Jones and Bernie Wrightson. Jennifer.
Oh, yeah?
I've been hearing about it for years. I finally pulled the trigger when my nephew, who's totally into horror, he goes, "Did you have Creepy number 63 with the story?" I was like, "No, I don't." He's like, "Oh, because I want to get it because the story." I'm like, "That's it. I'm buying this freaking. I want to talk about this. Why do I want to talk about a comic book I don't like? Why do I want to talk a movie about it I don't like? Why do I want to talk about a restaurant I don't like?
Yeah.
Let's talk about stuff we like." Michael Deere, what construction? I'm an electrician. Right now, I'm working.
Oh, no, I think he was talking to me. No, I'm kidding.
You're a construction too?
No, just screwing up my house. Incorrectly installing three-way switches. That's about my speed. But hail the Lord. I don't talk about comics I don't care for. That makes people upset. I think that they're
sides. Isn't this what we left for? I mean, we all talk about the blacklists over at Marvel.
Yeah,
that got Chuck Dixon out. You know what I mean? And then other people, because Chuck Dixon didn't want to pick a side or whatever. Well, we left like I had a friend that was a militant atheist, and he would just preach atheism all day long. And I'm not particularly religious, but whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm tolerant in the best sense of the word. But this guy would be like, "You're stupid, you're stupid." And I said to him, "You left dogma because you can't stand this regimented thinking." I said, "But you took the worst part with you, this zealotry, and I know better, and follow these rules." And now we all left Marvel D Street, but we're taking the worst part. We're not taking the best. The best part is the creativity, the fun, the artwork, the adventure, the wonder and awe and majesty. But we're forgetting that, and we're talking about, "Don't talk to this guy. I hate this guy. Why aren't you talking about that guy? This guy hates this guy. This guy, whatever."
Yeah, I think that there is room for talking about comics you don't like if you're talking about them in a technical sense. Like,
correct,
this is why this comic doesn't work. Or even to say, like, this is how they do it. I think it would be better if they did something such and such way instead. I think that's fine. But, first of all, how many times can you say that? And I think, like, you say it once and then you kind of leave it, and you don't have to get into like personal spats with the authors.
Correct. Absolutely. I generally don't do negative. I don't do reviews on my channel. I call it showcase. I just talk about stuff that I like. Once in a while, I will show a comic that I don't like for a specific purpose. Like, I didn't like this because this is not the way the character is, or this is how not to do something. If I'm trying to build something positive out of it, I will do a negative showcase. So I have no problems, and I do think it's healthy to criticize. But are you criticizing because you want to make something better, or are you criticizing because you don't like that guy? Because I don't particularly like Mark Waid, but Kingdom Come was great. I don't particularly like Mark Waid, but Roos that he did with CrossGen was a great comic. Dan Slott is kind of a jerky guy, but his She-Hulk is an amazing comic. So I could like stuff. There will be a point where I separate the art. Well, I can't separate the art from the artists, but for the most part, comic books, it hasn't happened yet. Nobody really did anything that egregious that I was a fan of. There's the people who did things egregious, but I was never a fan of them in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had the experience where your interaction with a comic book creator was so bad that you were just turned off to anything they did?
Fabian Nicieta. He was on
Oh,
my
really? Interesting.
He was, and I love Fabian Nicieta comics. He's a good comic book writer, but he was just nasty and condescending. If you watch it, in my playlist, in my conversation series, he's there. You could just see me trying. My instincts were saying to fight this guy. So at one point, I turned my camera and I showed my stack of 2-read comics over here, and he goes, "That's a sign of mental illness to have so many And my gut instinct was, "Oh, really? How many less of your comics should I buy to make you happy?" But I didn't say it. And then a couple of days later, he's on Twitter and he says, Gina Carano got what she deserved. So I played dumb and I said, "Hey, Fabian," because I knew we followed each other. So I said, "I don't follow Star Wars. What did Gina Carano do?" I knew, but I was playing dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Goes, "I don't know. She said something anti-Semitic." I said, "Okay, so you don't know what she did, but you know she got what she deserved." So then he told me to take a comic book and jam it up my ass. So you know what? He's making a comic book with Kirk Biasek, and I'm not buying it. Because that was a personal attack against me. That wasn't just like comic book fans are jerks, or I don't like your political party, or Coke is better than Pepsi. You know what I mean? This was you stick a comic book up your ass because you caught me making a jackass out of myself. So I'm done with him.
I had a very bad interaction with someone on Twitter. I won't say it on air, but
it's not hard to believe.
I know, right? But it was a comic book author, and they mentioned like, "Hey, this book is out," or whatever. And I tweeted back, "Oh, I got this book. I really liked it." And what do you think the reply to that would be?
It should be, "Thank you. I'm so glad you liked it." You know what I mean?
It should be.
Yeah.
But it was, "I write other things too, And I was like, "Oh, well, okay. Now I don't ever want to buy anything you do again. Thanks for ruining that series for me."
You know what the good response was? "You know what? I could buy other things too, Yeah. Guys, I promise you, from the bottom of my heart, if I'm nasty to anybody who buys my comics, my wife will beat the crap out of me because she sees how much money I'm spending. She won't let me. She's more practical than me." Somebody said something about Local Man. Local Man's a great comic. Tim Seeley. I've been talking to Tim Seeley like once every 2 weeks. Yeah. I don't know if he's blowing me off and just being nice, but my policy is if you didn't say no, you didn't say no. Anything that's not a no is a mate. But he could only do talks during the day, and I work during the day, so we've been trying to work something out. But I love Local Man. Local Man's a great comic. I still buy. I haven't read
that one yet.
Yeah, the premise is he's a 90s superhero, but it's 2024.
Oh,
so it flips back and forth to like that extreme big pockets and everything like that. And now he's living with his parents because he's like a disgraced superhero, and everybody in the town, like they drive by, they spit out him, and then but he's finding out that there's unsolved supervillain problems. So now he's like coming out of retirement, and and the other superheroes don't trust him. It's a good comic,
So, I know that you're a big superhero fan, but
yes.
I got a non-superhero question. Do you think the larger companies should be focusing on non-superhero or non-cape and cowl genre books?
Yes. I can't say I originated this idea, but I wish I could remember. But could you imagine if you turned on the TV and it was only shows about nurses? Wouldn't that be weird? So comic books is a genre, but like when you say comic books to a normie, they think superheroes. They think Green Lantern, Spider-Man. But there's war comics, there's sci-fi. Why not nurse comics? And that's what manga does.
Yeah.
Chuck Dixon says one of his favorite mangas is about a grandfather and his grandkid fishing. It's just about fishing, you know. And you know, and then the manga does Vikings, and manga does whatever. They do porno ones, they do anything. Why can't comic books do that? You know, in the crowdfunding scene, I'm seeing a lot of different comics. You know, like I just read Wolf of Batsy. It's you know, it's a sexy horror comic. You know, not for kids, but he's not trying to pretend it's for kids. You know, and then I'm just looking around at other crowdfunded comics I got Snowman. You know, this is I didn't read it yet, but it's more horror. But why not a cop drama? You know, why not magicians, fantasy? There's a lot of sword and sorcery stuff, which I'm really liking. So that's cool.
Yeah, you know, one thing about that Superman, the early Supermans that I've been reading, and a lot of those early comics, is they're very clearly based on pulps. You know,
Yes.
so pulp superheroes. You had like Doc Savage, the Shadow, you know, the Phantom, and they weren't all cape and cowl type of superheroes, but they were still stories that would draw you in. And recently on Netflix, there was a series. I wanted to read the manga, but I never found it. But they made a cartoon of the series called Hajime no Ippo, which is a boxing comic, and it's about a kid who he's bullied all the time at school. And one day, like, he meets a boxer who's out on a run, and that boxer saves him from the bully. And then he's like, "Oh, now I want to be like this guy. I want to be all brave and tough."
That's a good idea. Why not?
Yeah. So that's the thing. I'm wondering, like, in that we have like something that kids can relate to. Whereas I think most of the modern superheroes, like, how many kids can relate to a woman who's a god but has cancer? You know what I mean? Like,
but they're not trying to make it relate to kids.
And that's kind of
and Marvel and DC. You know, the whole representation thing. I reject it whole cloth. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, but maybe people are taught differently. But to me, representation, like, you found traits in characters that you liked. You know, we read Frankenstein. You related to the fact that this guy was like rejected by society. He was an outcast, and you know what I mean. Nobody looks like Frankenstein. Nobody's supposed to look like Frankenstein. Nobody looks like Ben Grimm. You know what I mean? Pinocchio, the little wooden boy. You know, you felt sympathetic. You know, Hellboy. Nobody looks like Hellboy, but everybody loves Hellboy. So I reject that whole cloth. But you know, I don't know. Making a comic book to represent women with cancer who want to be superheroes. I don't know. There's 9 billion people on the planet. Could we find 7 of them? Why are you marketing? If you believe in representation in America, if that is what you think will sell comics, then all comic books should be about straight white men. So it's not even about representation, because they're lying to you if they think that's what sells comics. So you know what I mean? If I thought, okay, I got to make a comic book that resembled the most prolific person in America, I would make a comic book about a straight white man. Oh, geez, I am. Oh, but you know what I'm saying? They don't even believe the nonsense that they're selling. So whatever. You know, if you can't relate to Spider-Man, whether you're Asian, African, Martian, or whatever, then there's something wrong with your humanity, because this is a kid who was picked on, who was you know, has a mother figure that he loves and he needs to protect, but he also has to pass the test, and then he has to get to work on time, and then next thing you know, Dr. Octopus. You know what I mean? I'm getting anxious just talking about it, because it's real life with robots and laser beams and space aliens. You know what I mean? Like, and here's another thing. I hate Miles Morales. Okay? It has nothing to do with his skin color. I hate Miles Morales. And everybody who says to be a left-winger should hate Miles Morales. Why? Because he's scab Spider-Man. They created Miles Morales because at the time the Ditko estate was threatening a lawsuit because they wanted to get the rights to Spider-Man back. So Brian Michael Bendis, patient zero of the worst thing about comic books, they created Miles Morales to replace Peter Parker in case they lost the lawsuit. He's scab Spider-Man. You know what I mean? And they wanted to make him as different as so there you go. it's trampling on creators. It's trampling on creators' rights, and it's trampling on the whole process of creativity. So anybody who loves Miles Morales, it's just like, oh, I didn't know you hated creativity and original, supporting the original creators, but whatever. There you go. There's politics. John, am I doing a Sunday Comics for Father's Day? Yes, I do not want to stop doing Sunday Comics. I'm not a father, so and my father passed away. My father-in-law passed away before I even met my wife. So Sunday is just Sunday to us, and I love Father's Day. One of the things that drives me crazy when all these single moms start saying, "I'm a father." No, you're not. You're not the father. You're a mother, and God bless you. You got a lot of work to do, but you're not the father. So. Anybody have a suggestion? I'm racking my brain to come up with a Father's Day comic for Sunday's comic. So if anybody in the chat has a good idea, you'd be really helping me out. Because
okay, I got one.
Oh, what?
Do you have that one where Scott Summers and Jean Grey go into the future to raise Cable?
Yes. That was when I was.
Can't remember which one that was.
So I don't remember the numbers too well. I thought you were going to say the one when Scott Summers leaves Madeline Pryor holding a baby to go back to his ex-girlfriend.
That one. Yeah, that's like anti-Father's Day. That's Mother's Day. Mother Effer's Day.
That's it. It's Mother Effer's Day.
No, but there's got to be a lot of good ones.
Yeah, anybody have but that's just it. Marvel Comics, DC Comics, they don't really celebrate fathers, so.
I'm trying to think of another one, but
a good Father's Day, and I'm gonna have to go now because I'm gonna at 9:00. I'm gonna be on the Friday nights Mad Ruth channel, and I want to eat something because I have a feeling it's gonna be a long. So
no worries. What was that channel you're gonna be on again?
The Friday nights Mad Ruth. Let me see if I have a link. Okay. What is the name of the channel? The Mad Ruth. MADRU. Yeah, Mad Ruth. I'll be there in a half hour. I put the link in my community post on my channel.
Okay, so nice.
Yeah. 9:00. He has topics. They're going to do like they have 3 guys, and then they have a rotating 4th guest, and they kind of want to wait till people are in the middle of a campaign, the slow point. Mm-hmm. So that they purposely scheduled me to be at this low, to see his comic point.
Very nice. And
very nice. Thank you.
And if you're into classic Gamma World, that's tabletop role-playing game, in about a half an hour I will be on the Dungeon Delvers channel where I play a obese mutated communist cat.
Not too far. Come on.
Yeah, it's about the same.
You're supposed to role play in these games.
I know it's easy to role play. I role play as myself.
I might as well say that my comic is an extension of my role playing game, Villains and Vigilantes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Yang and I talked about our love of role playing games. And I'm making cards. If you go to the campaign page, you'll scroll down. I put up the first 2 cards they unlocked. On the back, they're going to actually have the Villains and Vigilantes stats. I got permission from Fantasy Games Unlimited to do that. And Scott Bizarre, actually said, once you get like 6 issues or so, maybe we'll do a Villains and Vigilantes supplement book. So I'm like,
that'd be cool.
Yeah. So there's the first 2 cards. We got the Patriarch, we got Boss Moxie, and then the 3 henchwomen, and then the main villain that I didn't reveal the main villain of the issue yet. And then I realized that there's another villain in the backup story. So there's a super secret stretch goal that's not even on that I'll do so there'll be 7 cards if we unlock them. For every $1,000 now I'll unlock another card.
Very nice. So for anyone who missed it, go check out Heroic Tales #1 on Fund My Comics right now. Soon to come to Kickstarter. There is a link on my channel in the chat and in the description to the video. Go check it out. Go get the book while you can. John, thanks for coming by.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yep. And enjoy your dinner, my friend.
Thank you. See you guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks.